Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How y'all doing? We are back for another episode of Black Earth Conversations. We miss y'all. I hope y'all got into the last one and rewatched it because that was a good one. And tonight's gonna be a good one too. But that last episode, woo, child. Whew.
Oh, it was kind of spicy. It was a little bit spicy.
Spicy. A little spicy. Thank you, Troy. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I got you. Anytime you need me to put a finger in it, just let me know.
Wait.
Absolutely. Tonight we're talking about a great subject. Thank you to Candy Skiggy May. Y'all see her in the comments all the time.
Yeah,
and she sent this to me. Hey girl, hey, there she is. She sent this to me, and I thought that it was an awesome topic because in this time where we're talking about, the way we support one another as Black people, I thought that it was really important to really dig into this conversation tonight, and I thought it was great. We look to all the time. We look to Black women to be the strength, to do this, to do that. And I don't have a problem with, Black women being strong or independent, but I think that sometimes it becomes a weakness. There's a point where I think that it can become a weakness because people tend to depend on it. We become so indoctrinated to be this strong Black woman, to take care of ourselves and everybody else and to come be the fix-it. But has that now become so much of an expectation that it's our kryptonite? It works against us instead of for us. So I thought it was a great conversation to have when we start talking about supporting each other as Black people. And, especially in election time, we look to Black women to save the country because we turn out in droves to vote. And we look for Black women to save the Black man and to show up to the school and support our kids and do all of these other things. But it's like, is that now our kryptonite? So tonight I want to talk about, has strength become the Black woman's kryptonite? And I think that is a great conversation and a great topic. Hey, Pip, we miss you. So that's tonight's conversation. And so that's kind of where we all kind of kicking off this whole conversation about has strength really become the Black woman's kryptonite? Is it being used against us? Is it so much that people expect it that it's kind of like when you don't get it, it's like, well, what happened? Why didn't you do? You know what I mean? So that's what we're getting into tonight.
Now when you say kryptonite, well, I'm sure we'll get into that more. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Troy.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Good evening, everyone. I think the issue is many instances we may take, our sisters for granted.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a case of taking them for granted, or, and this is one of the things that my outlook on.
Troy, what happened to you?
Somebody's calling me. Somebody don't know. Somebody's calling me, right? But I think that one of the things that shapes my perspective on relationships is the fact that I look at my sisters as they're still human beings. So as many instances that we say the strong Black woman, yes, the sisters are strong, but at the end of the day, you have to look at the fact that they're still humans. They get tired. Right. Sometimes they don't feel like being strong for everybody else. Sometimes they need to be strong for themselves. They need to rest. They need to restore. They need to revitalize. So this feeling that sisters are so strong that they can take care of everybody in the world, including Black men, and with no hesitation, with no support, with no nothing, they can just keep going. And that's a fallacy because at the end of the day, okay, if they're so strong and they have to be so resilient for everyone else, who's going to be resilient and strong for them?
Right.
Let me ask you this, Troy, because you said the term strong Black woman 6 times. Right. That's nothing wrong with that. I'm getting a point. It seems that in today's time, that's I don't want to say a bad word, but it's triggering now. I notice sometimes when people say the word strong Black woman, it implies, forgive me for saying this, people. I'm just what
go ahead and say it.
Okay. It could mean bitchy or too naggy sometimes. Right. When someone's a strong Black woman, there's no longer
it can mean aggressive.
or aggressive.
Right. It has a negative connotation. Almost
Mhm.
it's come to the place to where when you hear the word strength and black woman together, it's come to mean that it's that white male narrative that I've said before, that we are emotional,
Yeah.
or we are, you know what I mean, that we are antagonistic, or like you say, Jeff, it's aggressive, it's in a negative way,
It
when
can
it's
be
that's
a
not the case. That's not the case, but it comes across that way. Here's Horace Towns, you guys. So I
Right.
think that, I mean, they're all valid points. It's all valid because it's all in. I think a lot of it has to do with how people perceive the term strong black woman, or
Nothing
how
wrong with
and
them.
that affects how people interact with strong, independent black women. Like, on the one hand, I'll hear black men say they want a strong black woman who is independent, can carry her own, can bring this to the table. And what she does is, on the other hand, is okay, wait a minute, it's too much. Okay, well, where do we find that balance, that commonality, to where you want her to bring this to the table, but to be honest, some of us is just looking for an opportunity to be able to lay that aside and come home and not have to do all of that.
Well, I mean, it's just like you mentioned. For different people, it depends on who you ask. When they hear the word strong, it's going to be synonymous with so many things,
Right.
both intrinsic and extrinsic, factors. And so, yeah, I've been in those circles where people think when they hear strong black woman, they may think ghetto, they may think quick to pop off and
Right.
be stereotypical. Yeah, right. I mean, and to some degree, that's what we see on television. That's what we see in cinema. That's what we see in movies. When they see the strong black woman portrayed, it's usually something almost in alignment with something ghetto or something negative.
Look at on
yeah.
Mark, Pam on Why'd I Get Married.
Right.
And,
there's a whole lot of movies. We got a whole lot of movies in Hollywood.
I find that reality TV has ruined the black woman's image, especially.
Reality TV has done a whole lot of negative shit, but
yeah, it is. But I really do think that, like you said, and I think a lot of it plays into what we see in movies and in television shows and all this kind of stuff, that feeds into what people perceive when they automatically see a black woman. And it's like, that's not every black woman. That's not what you see. That's TV. That ain't real. That's based off of somebody's imagination. That's not reflective of who we are.
I agree.
So, Piff, hey baby, we miss you, God.
Why, Piff? Real quick, why I thought at first I looked that thing behind you, I realized that was something on your phone. I thought it was
your hair.
I was like, wait a minute.
I was thinking the same thing. I just want to say anything. I'm like, okay.
It's not my hair. Let me just real quick. It's not my hair.
There you go.
Oh Lord. So I had some really profound things to say and share.
Sure, share it, girl. Share it.
Maybe like kind of deep for the beginning of the show. So I really thought about this topic, and let me shout out to my girl Candy, because at the beginning we didn't see eye to eye. We were on the outs a little bit, but I'm glad that we get along great now. So I really enjoyed this topic, but what I thought about was, it's really not how Black women are perceived. It's about an expectation. And let me share with you why. Black women are expected to uphold the Black household and march and do whatever it is we need to do.
And slavery.
To get things done. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then I remember on our show, we were talking about, like a lot of shows ago, we talked about trauma being passed down from one generation to another through birth.
Right.
And so when we talk about Black women being birthed by Black women, of course, we're talking about a lot of trauma in history that is passed down through the womb.
Right.
And so we talk about rape and different things like that have happened to Black women that make us believe that we are not worth what we are really worth. And so as I thought about this, and I just want everyone to think about this, Black women can be or may be walking around as a broken soul.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about someone who is a broken soul and not really knowing how to deal with that, that's profound, right? Because in our community, we don't embrace therapy. We don't embrace any of that, really. And
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of people that are just broken and don't know how to fix themselves. So when we have these women that are trying to say, my feelings are really hurt, they don't know how to say that. It comes out as anger. Or if you're a Black woman, which, you know, predominantly right now, a lot of Black women are losing their children, right? And they're being placed in all kinds of homes. When we talk about these type of things that are happening, it could be because of domestic violence. It could be because of whatever, right? When they go to court and they cannot say, I am angry because X or Y happened.
Mm-hmm.
It is that in is da, 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 da. But in the communication of Black women and being so misunderstood by all communities, including Black men, because some Black men don't want to deal with the anger that we feel.
Right.
It is important to understand that a lot of Black women feel like they are a broken soul and there is no outlet for us. So I kind of just want to be gentle in the conversation today.
Let it loose.
Right. No, I mean, say it. Absolutely. No, say it.
That's just my thought. I love everyone. I appreciate everyone.
We love you too, Epiphany.
But as I reflected and I thought about how I felt as a Black woman trying to communicate different things, and I was sharing with someone last night, I realized that a lot of the time this is how I feel. And I'm not necessarily feeling it like this at all times. It's just sometimes when it's important, right? Where I'm supposed to work through my fear and be courageous. And that's what is expected of Black women. It's not necessarily strength.
Yeah.
We are courageous women because we deal with things in spite of our fear, right? So I mean I'm gonna just
Yeah, no, I mean you said a lot, and there's a lot to unpack there. And at the end of the day, a lot of the strength and courage that we draw upon as Black women, it has become expected. It's so indoctrinated that people absolutely expect us to do all of these things, to be superwoman. And a lot of times we kind of it gets to the point that sometimes it builds up, and when we implode, we end up exploding, and people are like, well, what's wrong with her?
Right. It was a buildup.
Wait, what? What you mean? What's wrong with her? You know what I mean? It's like,
it is a buildup. It can be something that can build up over time. It can build up over relationships. It can build up over jobs. And all it takes is that one straw, that one bad day, the wrong person on the wrong day, and you can explode. And, I've definitely observed it. I'm glad it didn't happen to me personally, but I've certainly observed instances where I could tell, you could see someone just go into a fit of rage. And you could tell it wasn't about, this coworker, or it wasn't about this traffic violation. This person had been building this anger up for, a long time, perhaps, years and decades. I know for me, in my perspective, I can certainly acknowledge it. My whole thing is if I'm dating, a sister that I feel has some underlying issues and rage, my thing is, number one, can you acknowledge it? Number two, would you be willing to go to therapy? And if it means me go to therapy with you, I'm all for it. I've been to therapy, with my woman. I have no issue with it. I see the utility of it. But the issue is, some people, that's a hard thing. I mean, the first step about any addiction or any issue is, can you first acknowledge it? Can you first even admit that you have a problem? And then if you can admit that you have an issue or a problem or something that needs professional help, would you take the steps to actually go and get the help? If you can do those first two initial things, I'm with you. I'm not gonna let up. I'm not gonna leave you behind. I'm like, as Black women, you didn't leave me behind. I'm not gonna leave you behind. But I need you to at least acknowledge it. And if you're willing to go the extra mile, I'll go the extra mile with you.
Right. Before we get into this next piece, Jeff has a great point that I definitely want to hit on, and that is identifying triggers. I want to get Horace Townsend here to talk about his perspective on the conversation and see how he feels about it, what his experiences have been with the whole concept of what we're talking about as far as the strong Black woman.
Oh, well, good evening, guys.
Good evening.
I just feel with the word strong woman, I just traditionally feel that most of the strong women that I've encountered over my life were people that were strong. It wasn't something that was projected or professed. That's typically what I've endured. Mm-hmm. I think now we find stuff to market ourselves or label ourselves with, just like the word independent. Just like women say, hey, I'm a strong woman. Mm-hmm. I will say that most women that I've dated or known over a period of the 2 decades, I can't think of the majority of them have endured some kind of trauma in some sort. And I know in a relationship I was with, we had to work through that for a long time, and they didn't even realize that they had some trauma. And they would explode, and the triggers were things that I unintentionally did, but somehow once we actually went to counseling as a couple, you will actually see, and they understood. So I do believe therapy is good for everyone because I think we all carry around a lot of stuff. But I will say traditionally, the strong women that I consider strong women were our grandmothers and great grandmothers who didn't have it good, but they were that support beam in the family. While Dad was out doing what he wanted to do, one thing I give respect to is Black women, whether it's right or wrong, they kept that home intact. Right. And I think now this generation of women, in some sorts, is not accepting that. So it's like you having fun, I'm having fun, so ain't nobody in the home. So, but back to what I was saying, the strong women, I think it's something that you observe. I don't know if it's something that you will say, but I think being strong women, Black women don't have a choice. It just seems like they're put in those positions, whether it's through past history, trauma.
Disagree.
I just feel like they're usually put into those positions.
Disagree. No, I think a lot of times it's how they were raised or the family. Sorry for saying they. I'm really not trying to sound condescending.
But that's what I was saying.
My sisters were raised in very good environments, and they're very educated. And they do not carry themselves like what you see on television, the stereotype. I think a lot of times is how one was raised. A lot of times if they're in a single family home, a lot of Black families, single family home, and they see their mother struggling or their father not existent or their mother working 2 jobs to take care of them, of course you're gonna have a disdain to men. So you're gonna learn, I want independence. What needs to be understood is the problem I have is they put every Black man in that category. And that's what bothers me.
But that's kind of to my point. I've dated women who never knew their dad and didn't realize how that played a part in how they behaved in relationships or in life. You know what I mean? In general. So it wasn't her fault that she came into a situation where she didn't know her dad, or a situation where you might have a woman that was violated. So she has sexual trauma. So, and they've always been taught that you work through it. What goes on in this house stays in this house, and they're taught to suppress their pain. And at some point, that pain is going to come out. So I just think like we do have to realize that Black men, we endure a lot, but Black women have. I mean, it's a lot that's been put on their back because they are the ones who keep
I'm gonna bring something up later. I'll touch something that I touched on my show a few weeks ago with the Meg Thee Stallion, Tory Lanez thing. I don't want to get off topic about that, but yeah, I'll get on that. Just
I
the
think,
bigger.
here's what I want to say too, though. But I think that, of course, you made some excellent points about the Black woman in the household and how we're raised, and I can attest to that. And we talked about this in a previous show one time before about Black people in therapy and being raised that Black people don't go to therapy and that's for white people and all this other kind of stuff. These myths that are perpetuated that lead to more triggers. That's a trigger on top of a trigger on top of a trigger, and it all leads back to one word: trust. I think a lot of Black women are, to be honest, sometimes raised to be strong, and strong to the point of ridiculous, to where it's stressful on her because we're raised to not trust everybody or anybody at all but ourselves, and that we got to do it ourselves. Let me say this: when my parents got a divorce, it was, first of all, I was so little, I didn't really understand it, but watching my mother kind of struggle and have to figure out her own way, it created some things. And conversations she would have with me and my sister would be, never depend on a man for this. You got to be strong. You got to be this. You got to do this. You got to do that. So there are triggers and there are situations that are handed down and experiences that create more strength on top of strength, to where that strength becomes, again, toxic. It's kryptonite. It's toxic to that woman in the sense that it's meant to be good. But it ends up turning on her because we carry so much here that we weren't built to carry. And then we want to know that anything can be a trigger for a Black woman. I'm not trying to be funny, but at this point, you don't know what could trigger a woman in a blink of an eye. It's just like when we heard that person went postal at the post office, and we got the term going postal. You don't know what led up to that moment that triggered that person to go postal. It could be a series of things, and we have a series of things that the Black woman has on her shoulders, and it's like finding that release. Like Candy said, we're looking for that safe space, that home where we can unwind too. But it's like we don't really have that because we're supposed to be that peacemaker and peacekeeper in the home. So then where do we go? And then if we go to therapy, it's kind of like people looking at us like, well, what you going to therapy for? Are you crazy? Are you psycho? Are you this? Are you that? And it's not. And it's now we have a stigma. And now we feel some type of way about going to therapy and getting the help that we need because we don't have a safe space at home, because our job is to create peace and peace at the home. And it's like we're so much working to bring peace and harmony everywhere else that here inside here, it's not there. And that's when I say the kryptonite, it becomes toxic to us because we're so strong that we have nothing else in the tank for ourselves. And so you asked Jeff in the comments for me and Piff to talk about triggers and what could be a trigger. But the thing about it is anything could be a trigger. It could be seeing a relationship with somebody else. It could be a conversation. It could be a song. It could be anything that takes us, that flashes us to a memory or an experience. That is like.
Is that why sometimes like being men raising their voice, or even just saying, "Hey, calm down"? I noticed
that's a huge trigger. I'm a witness to that. I'm a witness to that. And if there's a woman that grew up in a domestic situation, whether it's watching her parents fight, or she got beat a lot just for nothing, if she grew up in any type of aggressive household or family, that's absolutely a trigger. And it's kind of like, are you gonna come at me? Even if you mean well, it's an automatic defense for some women. And so, yeah, and those are conversations where this is where you gotta gently have conversations and say, okay, babe, I noticed the other night. Like, let it pass. Like, you literally got to let it pass. That's not the time to want to have that conversation. You got to let it pass. And then you come back and say, babe, I noticed the other night when I said XYZ, this is how you responded. Right. I want to talk about it because I want to understand.
Now, let me bring this point up. There are times when us men are calm and will say, hey, I would have been guilty of saying, hey, if I do say something to you, will you be receptive? I have done it, and I guess it comes off condescending, but that's me also warning, like, I know you are. But unfortunately, it seems that no matter how I've approached, I've still gotten my head chopped off.
Yeah, but it's just in the moment. You got to know the moment.
But I'm going to interject because even on this show, Jeff, it's the way you frame things.
Mhm.
So, and you know, like, we're good, much love, all of that.
I know you can be real mean. You know I'm not sensitive.
No, I don't need to be real mean. But I would say when I had a job that taught me how to frame things very, very well. And when you frame something and you know how you feel strongly about it, like, we'll just take, for instance, people smell, okay? If you know that you feel strongly that you can't handle bad smell, you're like, look, I was going to talk to you about something. And then you turn around and say, you stink.
Whoa, wait.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it would be the same thing. You could say the same thing. You know what? I don't know what's going on. You have like an odor that just doesn't agree with me. You see how that's different? I think it's the way that you say things, because if you say, I want to talk to you, or please don't take this offensive.
Listen.
First of all, my wall goes way up. It's all the way up here. My defense mechanism is up, and I'm like, look, I'm behind my wall, and I'm
I
doing
agree with you. I tell people all the time, don't text me or message me saying, hey, I have a question, or hey, I need to talk to you about something. Just say it, because I'm immediately going to think something's wrong. And when you come to me, I'll be receptive, but my guard's going to be up, because I already think it's some bullshit, or I'm sorry, or I think you're going to come to me with, oh, someone said this or whatever. And it happened today. Someone got upset. They messaged me at 7:00 this morning saying, hey, I need to ask you something very important. And didn't respond till 5. And I was just like, and when they messaged me, I was kind of on edge, because I'm like, what is it? You know, so I had to explain to people, most of the time when you say that, I'm not going to respond very well. I don't have time for that. Just say what you need to say. Send me a question. Is this?
But not everybody is the same. And so that's the beauty of everything. The beauty of life is the fact that, one, we need to learn how to read a room.
Right.
Whether there's only 2 people in the room, we need to know how to do that.
Candy made a good point. I've heard that.
If you know that my cat claws are out and I'm feeling the type of way, don't keep pushing me till I'm the point of a full-on breakdown. And then I really do need, whatever. I need to see my therapist in 5 minutes versus I can see my therapist later this week. You know what I'm saying? It's very important, as I would say, just courageous women, period. Women are courageous, period. I think that women walk around with this level, especially Black women, a level of fear, because, one, we can't call the police and be protected.
Hell no.
I'm going to tell you, I've called the police before, and my ex called too. They came onto the property and they were like, oh, you can't take your stuff that you purchased. And thank God my brother was there to talk about the city codes and all this stuff, and the police backed down. We can't call the police and be protected. Other women of other races, they can. Black women,
I'm actually going to co-sign with you. I have a relative. I have a relative. She's my cousin. She's married to a white man, and he called on her. For him to down to her, she picked up a bottle, and the police officer not only arrested her, but he asked him, "Why? What did you do? What did you do to piss?" Like, well, she asked her, "What did you do to piss him off to make him do what he did to you?" Like it was his fault. I'm just like, and that goes back to the way there's a perception. And I've had my run-ins too. We talked about it. I'm not going to make this about me, today, but I'm learning to do better with just how I come off, because I feel like that's what it is a lot of times. But y'all go through a lot, and even in slavery days, like personify the Black man, but the Black woman kept the family together. And then even after working in the fields all day and bearing the kid, they still had to go back home and sew and cook and nurse and still take care of the white people's children and stuff.
Yeah. So there was a lot. I think that what we don't understand is when we talk about Black women being strong and needing a space. Candy hit the nail on the freaking head when she said we're looking for a place where we can be vulnerable. And at this point in time, the Black woman really does not have a safe space where she can truly be vulnerable. Like 100, 1000%. be able to be vulnerable and trust. And again, that takes a lot of trust. And I think it goes back to the episode that Horace gave us on Black men and Black women struggling to love one another. Having that space where we can create that place of peace. And Troy hit it in that episode when he talked about, as a man, he's just as responsible for creating that safe space and that peace in the home as that woman. We have to learn to come together. Here's what makes it difficult. Two things. One, when you have two people who are very strong and direct in how they communicate, you're gonna clash. You gotta grow up, and it's hard to do. That takes maturity. Two, I just made it in the comments. Fear. If a Black woman is in a moment of fear, you will not know it, but if she feels fear, even in the slightest bit, anything is going to trigger her in that moment. That ain't the time for you to be expressing how you feel about nothing. That ain't the time to tell her to do whatever. Your function in that moment is to reduce that fear so that she feels safe in that moment, whether it's rational to you or not. That fear is real to her in that moment, and you got to learn how to communicate with her about that. Troy, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. And then you explain what you mean.
I'll get. Yeah, go ahead, Troy.
That's kind of vague to me. Okay.
No, I was gonna ask, Dr. H and Epiphany. I mean, as far as what I'm hearing as a Black man, I'm like, okay, if you come through my door, or our door, whatever the case may be, I want to make you feel like, you know what, everything, all the bullshit the world makes you feel like, here, be vulnerable, be quote unquote. I said this on Ringside 2 or 3 weeks ago, be naked. I don't mean physically naked, but be straight up naked. You don't have to put on a facade, no nothing with me. So I guess my question would be, what can we as Black men do to assist the Black woman as far as, look, we don't always have control over what's going on outside as far as economically, politically, with housing, job market, whatever. But when you come home to us, whether it be come over to our house or apartment or our shared space, what can we do to help facilitate a more peaceful environment to where you feel more relaxed and more inclined to where you feel comfortable to be vulnerable and you don't feel like you have to be the strong superwoman.
Right. I'm gonna go to Horace, and then I'm gonna answer Jeff's point about the fear thing. Horace, go ahead and jump in there.
Now, I had a comment, but I think Trey was going down the road I was going down. I think we have to recognize that African Americans, Black people, we endure American experience like nobody else.
Yes.
And I think that especially for the females and men, but the females especially, examples, a young woman, expecting mother, goes into labor, loses child. That's trauma. A lot of times in America, we don't have the luxury of time to heal. We don't even grasp the concept of therapy. We just pack it in and keep going. We're taught that. Pack it in, keep going. So over a period of time, we all have a bunch of stuff that we're hanging on to. My brothers told me one time that I have learned to process and move forward on stuff that I didn't realize I was doing. I was grieving over someone that had passed 10 years ago. So when I got into a relationship, she allowed me to understand some of the things I was experiencing. But to Trey's point, I think as couples, we have to give each other grace, and we have to be able to have that naked conversation to really put it out there and say, hey, this is what I experienced, or this is what she experienced, and coming together to say we're both under attack daily, but hey, let's give each other some grace and help each other, be partners where we can work through some of these things that we're enduring. So I think that's the best part. Like Trey was saying, given that safe space, being able to get that trust and be naked with one another, and just realizing like, hey, we've all endured something from our childhood to our adulthood, and we got to be the best person we can be and keep processing through those things.
I think that there's a lot, and I made this point, and I want to hit this. And Gabriel, I'm going to get to a lot of what you're saying because there is definitely a truth, and I want you to share some of your perspectives about what it's like for Black women outside of America, because I agree, American history has created this fear. But when we talk about Black women and fear, Jeff, fear can be anything. Anything can create fear in a woman. Obviously any sign of aggression can be fear, but fear can be anything. And a lot of times it might not seem rational to the other person, but it's real to her in that moment because something triggered that fear that took her back to a traumatic experience in her life. So when we talk about fear, we're talking about anything that's going to send that woman into that will send her to a traumatic experience that she's had at one point in her life, whether it was directly or indirectly, meaning, maybe something directly happened to her that created that fear that could have triggered that fear in that moment, or something that she's witnessed that triggered that fear in that moment. And so it may not make sense to you in that moment, but it makes sense to her. And so when we talk about the support, Horace, man, that you don't know, just like men grieve stuff like you were grieving for 10 years, women do the same thing. And I think that we as Black people, we have a trauma, of racial trauma that affects us, but we've got to figure out how all of this trauma, not just racial trauma, but trauma period, that we experience in the Black community with each other. How do we get over that so that we're not expecting each other to be so super strong that we fall apart at a moment's notice, or even when something triggers us and we don't know how to deal with that. And so it's not just about going to therapy. Yeah, therapy is huge, but if you're not going to do the work, because it's not just going to therapy. There's work involved in going to therapy. You got to be willing to do the work and understand that it's not about attacking one another. It's about coming to a common ground to understand where we're coming from and our experiences. And I think that that's part of the problem.
People don't
that Black women are completely misunderstood in our strength and our courage, like Tiff said, that it becomes weaponized against us because, again, Black men specifically, who we want to be vulnerable with, to be that safe space to don't understand. And it's hard communicating that when we're dealing with different maturity levels. We're dealing with the fact that they're so strong and aggressive. So it's kind of hard, but we've got to figure out how to find that middle ground to where we can understand one another to get over this hump.
I'm going to address the elephant in the room.
Go ahead.
Everything you said was on point, but here's the problem, and I always tell this to everybody: delivery.
Yeah.
Delivery. My issue I've always had when it has come to our sisters is, even in work environment, whatever, it's not what they say. It's like you always say in your words.
It's how they say it. Yeah.
You say what you say. There's a difference between saying, "Hey, babe, I don't appreciate how you ask me this," versus, "Oh, you got me effed up. I'm gonna do what I want." And I agree. If not,
no, I totally agree with you.
Like to bring up their exes and my ex, or they go to their friends and badmouth you, and it's like they try to demean, and that's when
I totally agree.
Yeah,
but
I agree. I do agree. I agree with that.
That can also be a sign of a trigger. That can also be a sign of a trigger. That can also definitely be a sign of a trigger, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, because you just
realize that obviously something is triggering here, but we need to have a conversation about delivery. You know what I mean? It's definitely.
I tell anyone I deal with, you dismiss me, you raise your voice at me, you talk to me any way that I see is disrespectful, the conversation's over. Yes.
No, I was gonna say, but sometimes we get frustrated and have expectations that people are going to act and react how we will react. And a lot of people are walking around not even knowing that they have all these issues. Right. But the first step is acknowledging that you have a problem with communication. Listen, when I was a younger guy around your age, I had chicks that had communication problems, and I was like, ain't no way in hell. 10 years later, I'm like, I might have communication problems, So it's all about somebody being in a position where they can recognize they have communication problems, or recognize that they have
all the time.
They have triggers.
But if it happens all the time, Horace,
no, I think that if it happens all the time, that person is showing you that they don't want to grow and work on those issues. And then at that point, then you make your decision. But I agree with it is, you have to communicate and tell that person how their words are affecting you and how they make you feel. But like String says here, everybody is right, everybody is wrong at the same time. You just got to be open. But it's all about how we're communicating and being willing to work through it together. But again, if somebody shows you that they lack maturity, to grow up, you gotta, at that point, I think that there's also a point where you gotta start recognizing why you attract the kind of people who act that way, and then start working through what's triggering you or what's attracting you to this, and say, okay, let me identify this and be like, nah, because I already feel that this is gonna be it, and let me move forward. And it's okay. You like what you like. It's a preference. I don't, you know what I mean? But it's just
Sometimes you
getting
gotta
to that
recognize,
point, and that's hard to do. You got to recognize that.
and you gotta be able to recognize when somebody, that's who they are. They've reached their potential for character development, and they ain't going no farther. This is who they are, and ain't no amending their ways. That's their potential.
And you move on.
Bye.
You just move on.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just like you were saying, Dr. H, I recognize that a lot of us have issues, you know, from childhood, from high school, college, whatever, and they can seep into adulthood. And a lot of our personality traits, we don't realize, okay, it's because we haven't dealt with the shit that we had to deal with when we were younger. And I recognize that if I'm dealing with a woman, she's human. She's probably dealt with some shit that she hasn't conveyed to me. I'm okay with that. My whole thing is, the first couple of steps that I mentioned earlier. Number one, can you recognize it? Like, can you acknowledge the fact that you got some shit going on that you haven't addressed? Yeah. And number one, if you can recognize it, just at least acknowledge it, then okay, we're halfway there. Then the second step is, are you willing to do something about it? I.e., are you willing to go to counseling? If you're willing to go to counseling, I will go with you. We can go to counseling together. I will be there, hold your hand, and be as supportive as a man can be for his woman. I have no issues with that, because at the end of the day, no matter, as a Black man, when I think about all the shit that I have to deal with the house, so I can recognize Black women go through just as much, if not more. They've been overutilized, overworked, underappreciated, and over disrespected. So I do have a policy. I do have a framework where I don't know what's going on the outside with your job, with school, whatever the case may be. When you walk through my door, I am going to give you the proper respect. I'm going to give you the proper acknowledgement that you deserve, because I know you don't get that anywhere else. As a Black woman, you're the most disrespected person on the planet. But you're the most disrespected person on the planet outside of my house. Inside of my house is a completely different story, because I do recognize and acknowledge what you go through. However, in order to bring this into full fruition and actually get to the bottom, I need you to first recognize that you do have some issues that you need to, quote unquote, unpack, and, you know, at least get some help and seek some help. If you're willing to do that, I'm willing to travel down this road with you, you know, if you let me. But a lot of it is, what do you do when you have people, and I've seen this in ringside over the many years, that people that feel like there isn't a problem, or you feel like, you know, there are people who have all these demons, all this hurt, all this pain, all this unresolved trauma, but they feel like, you know what, it's not my problem, it's y'all problem. It's your problem, it's your problem, it's your problem. It becomes a blame game. So what do you do when you're dealing with someone who they're willing to blame everybody else, but they're not going to take responsibility and accountability? That becomes the issue. That becomes the obstacle to where, you know, like, you know what, you're not that cute. I can't deal with this. Unfriend me, because I can't do this no more.
Yeah. Right. One of the key things that you said that I want to hit on real quick before I hit to Horace, and I want to go to Piff.
Hit on it.
We have, as Black women, we have to learn to trust, honor, and respect the safe space that Black men create for us as Black women in the home. I think that sometimes we're taught to be so strong, and this is what I mean by being kryptonite, so strong that we have this layer of distrust that if it seems too good to be true, it is. And that at some point, that Black man gonna turn on you. At some point, this is gonna happen, and we're waiting for the shoe to drop. And it's like, it's not necessarily just listen to your friends. It's listening to stuff that you've been taught in your home, that you've been listening to, that's been handed down from generation to generation, like Pip said earlier, through birth. And so it's like we're waiting on that shoe to drop But what if that shoe never drops? You really got a good thing, but you're waiting on it to drop. And that's really hard. But again, going to therapy and working through those things, like Troy said, if you're willing to work on it, I'll ride with you. But if you're not willing to work on it, this is how we miss out on good things, because we're waiting on that shoe to drop. We're waiting on these other things.
Yeah.
We're waiting for a trigger to happen. That's not going to happen, but we don't know it because it's
No, I mean,
all that stuff.
and I've dealt with that. I've definitely dealt with that with a woman.
It's like that self-sabotage,
you know,
that you're talking about.
I know what it's like to deal with 14, 15 years ago, something like that, depending on what year this is right now. I definitely know what it's like to tell a woman, look, this is where I get off. It's been a fun ride, but I can't deal with it no more. I know what it's like to deal with a sister that can't at least acknowledge the fact that she hasn't resolved issues dealing from past relationships, from her mother, her father not being there, and then bringing that over into a relationship. Right. And when you deal with that, it's like, you know what? I'm trying to be supportive. Mm-hmm. I want to be there with you, but you're not giving me a lot to work with. Right. And I've had that experience where I just finally just quit. Like literally just like, you know what? Life's too short. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Yeah, you can't even, there's a 500-pound elephant in the room. You can't even acknowledge that the elephant is there. And until you do, don't call me. This is where I get off. So I've had that experience. And that's why I guess I'm saying now it's like, look, nobody's perfect. I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes, because you dealt with some things prior to us meeting. You dealt with some things from childhood trauma, from high school, college, early adulthood, whatever, that has nothing to do with me. However, being in a relationship with me now, I'm dealing with the aftermath and the consequence. Right. I can deal with an imperfect, broken person as long as you acknowledge it and seek some help. If you do that, then we good. We good. I'm good with that.
That comment is so real, Dr. A. About
it is. We can't expect other people to care more for us than we do for ourselves, and we can't expect them to put in the work, because it's kind of like Jeff going to the gym and Horace expecting to get the results. It don't work that way. You know what I mean? It's not like that's what we do.
Let me ask you this. This is one I've had too. I keep hearing the echo. I think someone's TV's on. What one I've noticed too is like some in relationships, sometimes something you think is a big deal isn't a big deal to the other. Right. Like I might not like something, and I've gotten the okay, well, I don't have time for this, or it's not that serious. I'm the type that I'm going to keep bringing it up until it's. Yeah. I'm sorry.
But like that's about respecting. That's about respecting the other person and being willing. Again, when people show you that they lack the maturity or that they're not willing to grow with you, because that's part about growing together in a relationship. That's when you got to, it's like, okay, and then they be like, well, what happened? We grew apart. No, I tried. But you remember when I said this? Remember when I tried to have conversation about this? And then there's sometimes where you just don't even need to have that conversation for your own sake. Just walk away because they're not trying to grow with you. Piff, I want you to get back in here. What are your thoughts? We said a lot. We said a lot. So come on and drop some more heavy stuff on us.
Well, the thing is that I guess I'll just start with the triggering part, because there has been a lot. So I will just give you an example of, because Jeff, you asked me for an example. So I'm gonna oblige you and just give you an example. So one day I was really excited. I had planned out this like perfect little date for my man, and I was like, yeah, And so my man came over. I had made like this full spread of food and like all this stuff. Well, I went to grab him, but it wasn't it was supposed to be that sexy grab.
Right.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
But he took it as though I was like trying to grab him in a negative
aggressive way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then he grabbed me. And he shook me and he said, don't you ever grab me like that ever again. Now, in the moment, I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not have any of the reactions that you probably would expect for me to have.
Right.
for me, the way that trauma sometimes will work is I kind of have like a latent reaction where once I process it, then I cry, then I have emotions. And I was able to share, look, it took me like 2 days actually to realize that I was triggered and I just felt uncomfortable in my skin. So I was able to say to him, look, I understand that when I did this, it did this to you, but when you did this was my reaction and this is how it made me feel.
Right.
The only thing that he was able to say is, I'm sorry, right? Because the action and the moment is gone and whatever.
Right.
But in even like a week later, the whole week, I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. I couldn't function properly, and I was just so anxious and just kind of feeling like I was walking through life having an out of body experience. I think that women that have been, you know, beaten in a relationship, or, you know, we talk about the home being a place where they can trust, that is important. And when you set that up and they're still not sure, right? It takes a lot of seed planting to ensure that. Like, I understand that you guys are planting the seed and you guys are watering it, but it may not be you that actually grows that seed. It may be someone else. And you kind of have to be okay with that. You're planting good seeds in women that probably no one has ever taken the chance or the opportunity to plant this seed. And trust me, there are ways that women or people reflect. And if they don't reflect, then that's on them. We're all different. But trust me, there will be a moment where their memory is triggered and they say, remember when someone did this for me and it was good, especially when things are really, really bad. People will remember the good things that you've done for them. I kind of feel like being a courageous woman, just kind of walking through life, you know, I realized, you know, I'm afraid a lot. More than I would even like to admit. You know, there's certain things that I won't do if I don't have certain people with me. Because I know that if I'm in a compromising position, I need to know that my boys or my girls or whoever it is I'm with is going to be like there to not, one, maybe sometimes get me out of my own trouble, but two, to like grab me and say, look, no, you're not going to do this to her. No, you're not going to do that to her. I mean, I've been walking in a club and I had like this beautiful shimmery top on, and this guy grabbed the front of it and was like, you come here, and he grabbed my arm, and it was like a whole scene. But had my friend not been there, you know, it would have turned in a whole different moment.
Right.
So, I mean, trauma happens everywhere. Two, women, and i.e. Black women, are disrespected everywhere. And yes, I agree with all the men on the panel, creating that safe space where we as women can be okay.
Right.
I think that's the biggest thing. Just tell her you're okay right now.
Right.
And walk away. And just leave it alone. You're okay, and just walk away. And let her be with her moment so she can work through the stages and come down.
Right.
And then approach the conversation if you really, really need to. But telling a woman it's okay, it's gonna be okay. Sometimes that's all I want to hear. It's gonna be okay, and it is okay. That is worth $10 billion. You
gotta know your partner.
I definitely agree with. I agree with that. 1,000%, because anybody can use that. I don't care if you're a man or a woman, whatever. Sometimes you do want to hear from the person you expect to say, you know what, it's going to be okay. I got you. What do you need? Whatever. Hey, y'all, my battery is like on 3%, so I can't stay on, so I apologize. Yeah. Honestly, you know what? With this light off, I'm like, damn, I look sexy in this bedroom. Like, I ain't gonna lie.
I don't understand why we didn't turn on the computer and let the blue screen go out, and because you were no, okay.
No, but
when he was advertising
I'm liking this though, because I'm like, damn, I'm looking kind of good right now. I kind of want to touch myself, but that's another story. But I'm gonna have to cut out because I got like 3% battery left. But yeah, I would say this as a final note. We have to let our Black women know that they are protected by us.
Yeah.
That regardless of what's going on in this political, economic, whatever atmosphere going on, we need to protect our sisters. That's just, I do feel that way by any means necessary, because they've been there for us for 100 years. They've been there for us since 1619, and even before.
Except Kamala Harris, but most have, and I get it.
Yeah, but fellas, like I said, keep going. We should never let these sisters feel like that we don't have our back. We need to let them know that we have their backs every single fucking day we get out of bed. So,
but here's the question: they need to let us have their backs. That's the key.
I agree. I think that.
I agree, Jeff. I agree with that 1,000%.
Yeah, I agree. Horace, you wanted to say something? Go ahead and get in it, babes. Good night, Troy.
All right, y'all. Y'all be safe.
All right.
Well, first off, I wanted to applaud Epiphany. I think the biggest thing is when you're able to identify, and even you sharing that story on the podcast is courageous. I think everyone wants to feel protected.
Yeah.
But the horror sounds of 2020, my big issue is always when I establish a relationship or friendship with any of my women, I always want to make them feel safe. Right. And I think that's the first thing I want to establish. Right. I will say, I was going to tell Trey that my granddad was a provider. He was a provider, but he was a hellish man in the sense that the way he ruled and the way he acted, he had a lot of toxic ways to him. Right. And for a long time, I hated him. I hated him most of my until I got to be an adult. And not knowing, I hated him so much until not even knowing that I kind of picked up a lot of his habits and ways and started to act just like him. So I always go back and say, once I identified that I established those traits, I had to change my ways. But it's always about identifying those issues. But I wanted to say, a lot of times in these relationships, a lot of people are in relationships not even knowing that it's more about relatability, if that's a word, but it's where you share traumas. A lot of people together where your life, we had the same kind of life. You didn't know your dad, I didn't know my dad, and the situation was similar. And a lot of times we mistake that for love. Not to say that friendship couldn't be beneficial, but I think that's where it comes back to being able to identify the traumas and then being in a position to make them feel safe that they'll want to tackle them. I dated someone who I knew everything they were going through, and they did not ever want to address them. And it made me leave because it was affecting me, it was affecting us, it was affecting their day-to-day and their choice. Well, it was too painful for them to do it, so they created an alternate reality. Yeah, so this was in my 20s. I dated someone like that, and to this day, I see that they're still going through that same cycle because they have yet to
it's a decision
moment or come to therapy moment and address those type things. So,
but what? Therapy is very scary.
Yeah,
looking in that mirror and saying, I have this problem,
right?
And the acknowledgement and the sitting in that space of who you actually are,
right?
And like being that, you know, whether it's past, present, or future, whatever, I mean, it's still not going to be future, but past and present, being okay with that, or acknowledging that you have to change, that's scary within itself.
It is. And
And
it takes a lot of courage.
it does. And so when we talk about women that have had to build up these barriers for whatever reason, they've had to build them up, to go to therapy and look in that mirror may be too much. It may be debilitating.
Well,
Right.
to me, are you talking about couples or just in general? Like,
And no, she's talking about as an individual.
As an individual.
Yeah, because you have to have
individual.
courage to be willing to look in the mirror and address yourself.
you know where I stand.
Because therapy is about you. It's not about the other person. It's about you doing the work on you. And a lot of times we don't want to see ourselves and uncover those layers of hurt and abuse and all the stuff and those things that make us who we are. But like Pip said, if we're not willing to do the work of facing the past and the present, we can never create that reality of the future person that we want to be. But it takes an incredible amount of courage and strength and boldness to walk into a therapy session and say, I'm willing to do the work, until you got to do the work. And it's kind of like she said, it can be debilitating to the point that, why do you think there are people who are on medication that go through therapy? Because they need to help them face that stuff.
Sometimes you don't know. At many shows we did on the Black Super Friends, I would make a statement, and I never had that moment. I was on the show and I was like, talk about relationships, and I was like, every relationship I was in, I was the one that left. And I used to wear that like, I left their ass. And then I had a moment where I heard myself from a different perspective. I was like, well, what does that say? I never addressed me. This was the first time in my life doing a show made me say, well, damn, okay, what about me that makes me do that? I seen it from the other side, but if I never got to a point where I can identify it, then I would still be in that cycle as well.
Yeah. It's hard. I think that sometimes people have a misperception of what therapy is like. And it's very hard when you've had bad experiences. If you've had a terrible therapist.
So I was just gonna get to that. So
that can be triggering for somebody. Because they've had a bad experience with therapy.
I was just going to get to that. That was my thing. Like I've tried it as a kid. I was a problem child, and I've tried it in relationship. And in the relationship, I was just told, "Oh, it's your fault. It's your fault. It's the man's fault." And then as a kid, I was just called spoiled. So to me, I always felt like they're just attacking me or just taking money to say, "Oh, it's your fault, Jeff."
Right.
So
they're not giving you anything to help grow.
I don't see it as. I even told my parents, like when they put me in, let me not put that out there. It wasn't just my parents, but like it just other counseling and stuff. I was like, don't just blame me, because if one second I feel attacked, I'm sorry, I came to you for help. And it's objective what seems as attack, but when you're blatantly telling someone in a relationship, oh, well, you seem like you're the problem, and it's happened 2-3 times. Yeah, I just think you're a crook. So I understand your doctor stuff. I'm going to bow out this part a little bit. I don't believe in it. I think it's a farce. So I don't want to discourage others from it. So I will just listen.
Well, I agree with Bryce. Our therapists aren't created equally, but when you've gone through bad experiences, it just makes it hard.
Same thing with the police. If 100% of my interactions with the police, the negative, it's really hard for me to, when I hear people,
it's triggering. It's triggering for you.
And that's certain types of women. When someone says, "Oh, Jeff, you need to date a woman of this kind of caliber," and I say, "Well, when I have this has happened," it's gonna make me hesitant. So
no, there are triggers for you, but at least you acknowledge the triggers. Like Horace said it earlier in the show. Half the battle is identifying it. Like as long as half the battle is identifying that you have a trigger that is there. What you choose to do with it is up to you, but at least you acknowledge that you have those triggers. And like I said earlier, sometimes people don't know that they have a trigger. They don't know. And a lot of times in your relationship, you're developing and you're growing together, something can become a trigger that you didn't know. So you can have conversation and you can talk about in the beginning, hey, this kind of behavior, this kind of thing, such is a trigger for me. I'm working through it. Okay, great. but maybe something else comes along in the relationship that becomes a trigger that person didn't know about. You got to be able to be open to acknowledge that, okay, I noticed that in the past when something has triggered you, you behave this way, and you did X, Y. You just did. Do you notice you just did that? They may not know it, but because you're observant, you noticed it, and now you might be identifying a trigger together. And again, like Horace said, this is something you got to be willing to do life together. And if you're willing to do life together with somebody, it's work doing life with somebody. It really is, and it's just, it's hard. It's really hard. Horace, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to give an example.
Go ahead.
I think a lot of times in a relationship, I'm going to give an example. In a relationship, before I got wise, most of us, when we first meet someone, we'll tell them what our triggers are sometime, right? And I used to tell, not knowing Piff, you learn. I told someone, one thing that was big with me was time and never question my manhood. And I did someone that when they got mad with me, they did just that. So it wasn't me getting angry about them, the comment that was made. It made me question them and leave them because of the intent. That shows more about the character.
There you go.
What hurts me.
And then, of course, did you get called sensitive after you got upset?
Did I get called sensitive? Nah, they were scared. But listen,
no, I knew that was wrong, because if you do something that intentionally hurts the other person, that shows that's trash. I'm sorry, you're a trash person for doing that. And at that point, what you're telling that other person, you're communicating to that other person in direct terms that you don't care about their feelings, or what, you know what I mean, and that you don't care about the relationship growing together. Because why would you hurt somebody that you say that you want to grow and do life with? You would not do that. So that's carte blanche for the other person to do what they need to do.
And then they love to say, "Oh, well, you didn't fight for me." Get off of that. Sorry, the dogs. I'll put it down here for some. I don't know why they're
Michael Vick.
But I don't know why they're down here.
That was a good one, Horace.
Sorry, you guys. Hold on. Let me mute.
I can't stand you.
He's over there going through it.
Well, go ahead, Horace. I'm sorry, your example.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I'm good. I'm sorry. The wire's being chewed on, and so there might be hot dogs made over here.
Oh man,
Chinese will have food later. But go ahead.
Oh God, that was a good one. That was a good one.
That was good.
Well, I just think I'm just gonna jump in.
Go ahead.
Honestly, you know, when we do share our vulnerabilities, it's to try to make someone feel comfortable being vulnerable in the space. And I'm just one of them weirdos. I will give you, I'll give you some information that you may feel it's deep, but I don't feel like it's deep, right?
I don't think it is.
I'm gonna see what you do with it. That's just how I am. I test everybody. And I'm not afraid to say that. I test family members. And a lot of them don't pass. And then I just put them in a certain little compartment. And then I'm I never say, I don't trust you. I don't say those things. I just put you in your compartment. And when you're in your compartment, there are ways to get out of that compartment. But for me to be vulnerable with you, it's going to take a lot.
Let me ask you this, Piff. You're speaking of family. You guys are speaking of family. Do you have certain family or whatever that you tell certain things to? And I'm gonna get to my point of how this goes with topic. Do you have certain family you tell certain things to and others you don't, because you know they don't, when they go running and gossiping, they don't do it with the intent to help? You think they're trying to demean you? Or
just because you say you share DNA don't mean that you treat them no different than anybody else.
Exactly.
I think the thing is with family, there's always going to be some level of judgment because they're human, right? We're human first, we're family second. Right. And the thing with family is there is a built-in competition. So no matter how much you want to say, oh, we're not in competition. No, we're always in competition. How many degrees did I get? How much money am I making? what are you doing?
Or when you buy a house, they walk through it and say, "Oh, when so-and-so bought theirs, it looked like this, or it was this many rooms."
Right. It's always, and you have to be, and I unfortunately, I learned this in the past 3 weeks going through a major thing. You have to realize that competition, especially people that keep that competition at bay, or they can manage it very well.
That's right.
Once that person is gone, that competition is it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's open, and
we are going through that right now. But
it is not.
So let me ask you this. Gets me. Well, of course, see what you're gonna say, and I'm gonna get to why that had to do.
No, that's okay.
No, because my comment's gonna take us down another road.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think the thing is like, for me, right? My person, my courageous woman, she's gone. As my mother, she passed a few weeks ago, and keeping our competition at bay with me and my sisters, and really, she always talked about how we were this. You know what I'm saying? If we're, there's 5 of us and we're together, we're a fist. And it always made sense. But now that she's gone, we're just kind of like this. We're, and I kind of, our sisterly bond has taken a hit. And I know that it's because we're going through our thing, right? But the other thing is, how do we get back to where we were? Which we are very close.
Right.
But in realizing that we're all strong in our own right, I realize that we have great weaknesses as well. All 3 of us.
Right.
And I will reflect on myself, because I'm not here to tell my sister's business. I realized that I processed things so differently when I was a child, dealing with my mother, and they processed a whole different situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. At the end of the day, we will get back to where we were. It's just going to take, it's like Dr. Hughes says, it's going to take some work. Yes, right. She was our glue. And when you lose the most important, like your mom is the most important person.
Mm-hmm.
Like she is your life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very different. Like that space is very different when you have that person leave, and she is that courageous woman and walked through life and gave you saw the courage. You saw, I'm gonna tell y'all, my mom went through some things.
Right.
In spite of her going through some things, I remember someone was trying to break in our house one time. This woman knocked a man over a 2nd-story balcony. So I will say my mom, and that doesn't mean she wasn't afraid, because she was having me shimmy down all right,
shimmy.
She was having me go down a sheet, and I was in the middle of the sheet on the 2nd story, and she had knocked the man over the balcony.
Right.
And all I heard was screams, and my sisters were in that.
Mama Epiphany wasn't no joke.
It was not a game.
Right.
So I think what we carry in our going back to being courageous women, what example did our forefathers or our foremothers leave us?
Right.
And we always have to remember, some people's examples are not the best.
That's why during Black History Month, I do Black History Fact Day, and I don't do no Black History is boring, but I try to find stuff that no one's heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
20% of the accomplishments I share are women, because a lot of times they were pioneers to something greater. Or if it wasn't for like Shirley Chisholm, no one. It's so sad that people don't know much about her, and the fact that she was a precursor to a lot of women running for suffrage, because she wasn't taken seriously. But it's just as small as that.
Yeah.
So,
Forrest, go ahead and get in here and share with us in our last few moments of the show, our last 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Well, good evening, Dr. Towns here. I would like to say that right now in current America, we do not have the luxury of being divided anymore. I think the black man and the black woman have to atone. We have to realize that we're in the midst of our oppression, that we have to resolve our issues and create, create that structure, be on one accord for once. We have to attempt that. I want to also say that, not to strong women have been the pinnacle since the beginning of the time. You know what I mean? And I somehow have an issue where I see our generation, we were products of strong black women. I do fear this next generation doesn't understand what strong is. And I'm talking about the City Girls era, right?
Yeah. Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B.
Tell the truth. It's a different generation. It's totally different.
So everything that was sacred and what was taught generation to generation, so that the next generation is thrown that straight out the back window. And that is something that bothers me because in your generation, y'all moms and grandmas probably was slapped your wig loose, even if you weren't wearing a wig. I think right now that word strength, the courage that black women have had for so long, I really wish that we can restore that, have that, really emphasize and get the next generation to understand the impact that the black woman has on culture and civilization.
So you know what, first, you know what's missing?
Go ahead.
You know what's missing? The stories. The stories. So I'm gonna tell you, I have decided I'm going to start my YouTube channel.
Yes.
It says it already exists, but when it emerges and I actually have stuff on there, I will release it to the world. But it is so important for us to pass down our family stories. And that's something that really resonated with me when I watched the movie Roots. It wasn't that necessarily we talked about slavery and this and that. I mean, that is all important too.
Family is the key element.
But the story, how
some people are triggered by the violence and stuff.
Right. But how intricate that story was. And when I watched the movie, then I was led to read the book. And, whether you read or not, I'm not even here to talk about that. But storytelling, even within my own family, like my mom used to tell us amazing stories. It's gone. It's gone. When we sat at, just being in the car, we're listening to whatever. It doesn't even matter what we're listening to, because you could be listening to Old Town Road. It doesn't matter. We're not telling the stories from what happened before. And that's what shaped us into being these strong people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to say that's what she's absolutely right, because my grandmother's like 105 when great grandmother 105, her mother was 105, but my grandmother was who taught us, when we went to the reservation, like she knew her history to a T, and she used to always tell us we ain't come out with no slave shit, so we was already here. So she was telling us 40 years ago those stories, and then now people are starting to understand certain stuff, but certain stuff not in books, but it was a lot of stuff that she told us that made me walk around my city, my chest out. Oh, my family's on this. Oh, we did this. So
I agree.
It's big.
No, I agree. I think we're definitely missing the art of conversation and those stories of strength and perseverance. I remember my uncle, when he came from New York, he grew up, like when he turned 14, he moved away and he went to New York and was on his own. And, he got paralyzed running numbers with Malcolm X before he became Malcolm X, when they called him Red. So before the movie came out, my uncle sat us down and we would sit and he would tell us the story. I knew the conch story about how he conked his hair, how his hair turned red. I knew about all of that before the movie came out because my uncle told us about the story and the heroine. And, those stories, sitting, listening to my grandfather talk about, what it was like during Reconstruction for his family and being a tenant farmer and leaving that and making a decision to leave his family and never see his parents or his siblings again because he couldn't take working the land as basically tenant farming was still slavery. And those stories of perseverance that you hear handed down from generation to generation. But the thing about this generation is because those stories stopped getting handed down, they don't have that story. They don't have those stories because you got babies. This is the generation of babies who made babies, so they don't have those stories, and they don't have Big Mama. They don't have that. And like Piff said, they don't go. Who's going on road trips in cars anymore? I remember those times when my mom would pack my sister up in the car, and baby, we going on a road trip. I don't care if we was just going to Tampa or Cocoa Beach, Jacksonville, Key West. It didn't matter. We going on a road trip. Music might be on, but we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk about what it was like growing up. My grandmother definitely would always talk about what it was like growing up in Bimini, Bahamas.
You need to know where you come from.
In the Bahamas, and because you're gonna know your history, where you come from. This is the stock you come from. But when you have a generation that don't know where they come from, and you don't have those conversations, I think that's where it comes from. And we have a different level of engagement, and you don't have that. And so, like Piff said, we don't have those stories. Like Horace said, we don't have those stories. And so you got that city girls, you have this different, it's a different mentality because we're not having those conversations. And, when you have Black History Month, you're dependent on Google to tell you about Marcus Garvey. And it's the same stuff. You're going to hear about the same people every single year. It's like, okay, can we talk about somebody other than the same people every year? Like we don't have nobody else.
I got fired from teaching adjunct at Nova because they wanted me to just teach Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King, and I literally was teaching them about not just Spike Lee. I was showing them Crooklyn and other stuff, but I was talking about W. Law, Malefi Asante, some of the ones that
they want you talking about those people.
They want me talking about them, and I even talked about David Walker and his appeal, and John Brown. They don't like that. They literally told me
because it can't be whitewashed.
They told me that I was literally getting people scared. People were scared to look at the content in my class. So they told me I couldn't teach there no more. That was the reason. I didn't even sue. I just said, okay. I said, you know what? I don't even want to work for this place. The EEOC told me I would have a good case, but that's so sad. They didn't want me to do that. Oh, and I showed roots. They didn't like that. But
this is a good point, Davina. You're rare. She said she was a baby having babies and still was able to share stories from her grandparents because they were still alive. But there's so many who don't. Their grandparents aren't alive anymore, and so you have an advantage that unfortunately others don't have. And and I applaud that. We need more people who are willing to be courageous to tell those stories and be excited about telling those stories. I agree with Jalen here. I've personally seen this myself. Children aren't as inquisitive today as they used to be, because I grew up, how come? Why is it like this? What my nephew is full of questions, but I've encountered a lot of young people that don't ask questions.
If it's not ratchet or interesting or something that's intriguing, they don't want to hear it. Or if it's equated to something that they see as boring, people don't read no more. People don't.
I agree.
No, let me tell you, because I teach different age groups.
Right.
I think when you have the ear, and it's the heart behind it. And I'm not saying that y'all don't have the heart, so please.
Oh, we know.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I always have to disclaim because some people be like, "Oh no, she did." So I will say I've definitely sat my students down and I have told them stories about my own family history. It's just when you're in that moment of, hey, you want to hear something different other than this, or y'all are acting wild and crazy. Let me tell you something to settle you down. And I will sit down and tell them a crazy story about my mom. Someone talked about their mom picking cotton. My grandparents had 200 acres. My mom picked a lot of cotton. She went to her friend's house and picked some cotton and told him that he didn't know what he was doing because he bought the wrong machine because it didn't get the right cotton. And so it's things like that,
Right.
that you're able to pass down. And like you were saying, showing the perseverance, because we're asking women of today to persevere through their circumstance, right? To go take it back to being a strong Black woman. We're asking a woman to do these things. They do not know how because the stories have not been passed on.
Right. I agree.
And we are too busy. Literally, we're too busy working. We have been given a gift. I mean, not that Corona is a gift, but I feel like in a way it's a gift because number one, people really see what teachers actually really do. And there has been a huge, like education, the way it's viewed is completely different than how it was viewed this same time last year. Now, there's always going to be that person that thinks of teachers as a daycare, a babysitter, and that's fine. But the importance of spending time with your family, and there was 3 months that almost all of America was sitting at home. What were you doing?
On Facebook and Twitter, griping about the pandemic and how bored they are instead of taking time to be.
That was your opportunity
I hit the
gym. To get to know your children.
I know how to play the piano now. I know one.
I'm almost done with the degree because of it, but I'm saying that was your opportunity to get to know your children, pass along family stories, call grandma, call grandpa, spend time with your family, because I have a feeling we're going to be inside for another 3 months. It's going to be numbers are going, y'all. Spend time with your family and pass those stories.
It's gonna be cold anyway. Well, except for you people in Florida, of course. But y'all have another season coming up.
Just don't come to Florida, Jeff.
It's crazy.
We're not welcome in Florida, Jeff. Okay.
Don't be nice. Towns, do you have anything you want to say before we close out? And I'm going to get to.
I told Dr. H that's one of my best friends. I'm actually going to his graduation in December, so I'll be there for a week.
Jeff, you talk so bad about Florida. We have enough of you people here. Do not come to Florida, sir. Okay.
Whatever. Anyway,
please.
I cheer for the Heat though, so give me something.
Yeah, and I cheer for the Lakers. So
never mind.
Potato. Dr. H, I didn't know what I was going to be able to add to this conversation, but I thank you for this topic. I was so engaged, and I am so proud of Epiphany. She's been through a lot this month, and she still showed up and gave some great additions to the conversation while looking pleasant. Still looks like she has a crown on her head from how she's sitting. Yeah. So, I just enjoyed all of you guys this evening. Last time I wasn't able to join. But thank you, Piff, for what you added. And thank you, Dr. H. And, Jeff is my boy all day.
You guys, thank you for a very robust conversation. I think these are the kind of conversations we need to be having. The next time we're going to get into the wealth gap. I think it's important that as we talk about coming together as Black men and women and uniting, we need to talk about the wealth gap between Black America and everybody else, because at the end of the day, we don't know how to manage. We talk about Jalen, you can catch the replay, babes. The thing about talking about the wealth gap is we got to talk about how we manage our finances, because there's a lot of things that we are not taught in our community. And so we're behind the curve on so much. And then when we do get a little piece of money, we don't know how to handle it, because again, we are not taught financial responsibility or fiscal responsibility. So I think there's something we'll be talking about. We've got some other topics coming along, and I really appreciate you guys, because go ahead, Horace.
No, put that topic on the back burner. I want to talk politics. I want to talk. Yeah, we're gonna do it. Jeff, we're gonna hold it down, brother.
Leave
We're
me
gonna
alone
educate
with
these
my
people.
politics. Let's wait till after the election, please.
No, damn that. We need to talk about politics, and I
Mm.
know it's gonna be. We
'Cause
might have 25,000 views.
I
We need to have it. I'm
Yeah.
sick of it. We can hold it down, Jeff. Okay.
Okay.
Me and you.
Okay, so Jeff
You gonna
Jeff and
do it.
Horace, we will do a special show just on politics with
Bring
y'all.
Trey. We
You-
want Trey amazing.
I
Gonna get it.
don't know. Well,
Horace,
I have to see how he feels because he don't like really talking about politics.
my people
So
gonna find
That's
you.
why to be good.
My people gonna find you. Now half are gonna be with you, and half are gonna be ready to torch your house. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting.
That's
So
why to
Can
be
I
good.
say one thing
go
before we
ahead,
go?
Piv.
I need to work
Go
this
ahead,
back.
Piv.
So let's wrap this up. Sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Piv.
just want to say thank you to Clyde. He really was sweet, and of course, my biggest fan, Reggie. I always think of Reggie as my biggest fan. I don't know why, because maybe it's because I just whatever. But I just want to say thank you to everyone and the love. I really appreciate it. I do need every positive prayer I can get, because
We pray anyway.
What
some days
about my thank you?
and some days ain't. But we working it out.
What about my thank you, Piv?
Horace and Hughes, I'll
Horace,
see you
thank you.
tomorrow, right?
Yes. Call me when you get here. Are you
I
where?
don't know about that one.
Call me when you get here. So you guys, thank you so
Right.
much for tuning in tonight. We appreciate you so much. Stay tuned for the next episode. Make sure you guys like, share, follow me to get notifications about our shows when we go live. Have watch parties and have conversations about this amongst your own community of people, because it's really something that, if we plan to come together and bridge this gap between the Black man and the Black woman, we need to be talking about this kind of thing and figuring out how we can come together, because like Horace said, now more than ever, that's what we need. We need to come together. And so we appreciate you all so much for tuning in with us, sharing your energy. Y'all are the bomb.com in these comments. We love it. Keep them coming. If you got a topic you want us to cover, shoot it to me in a DM. Feel free to DM me. And we appreciate you all so much, and continue to spread lots of love and light. And we'll see y'all on the next show.